Here are some fantasy football notes from Week 10. Feel free to pause and read at any time. James Conner scored 15 touchdowns last season. We were reminded that he has that upside this past week with 2 touchdowns. He had 24 total touches. If you're looking to stream a quarterback on a given week, Marcus Mariota might be a consideration. He just had his 5th game above 17 fantasy points. 5th game of 40-plus rushing yards. That gives him a little bit safer of a floor. Nyheim Hines has yet to do anything in Buffalo. He was the 3rd running back in total touches. He caught 1 pass for 9 yards. 3 out of 4 of D'Onta Foreman's last games, he scored 16.5 plus fantasy points. He's rushed for games of 118 and 130 yards. 31 touches is insane volume. You love that. 2 weeks in a row, Cole Kmet has been a monster for fantasy. 22 and 23.4 fantasy weeks. He had 0 touchdowns in 2021, 5 across his last 3 games played. 11 plus fantasy points in 6 games this season for Donovan Peoples-Jones. He had a good one this week. He's a touchdown away from everybody talking about him. He has some pretty decent receiving yard upside with 5 out of 6 of his last games with 71 or more. Deshaun Watson is going to be his quarterback sooner than later. Dalton Schultz has been trending in the right direction. The last 3 games, he's seen 5, 7, and then 8 targets, 9.9, 13.4, and now 17.4 fantasy points. Plus matchup against Tennessee, but Russell Wilson was bad again, so don't start him anymore for fantasy. The production was not what we wanted, but the volume was there, which hinted at Amon-Ra St. Brown having a good week, in which he did against Chicago. Christian Watson for Green Bay is going to be a hot waiver wire ad, scoring 3 touchdowns and showing his downfield athleticism. Nico Collins had his career best fantasy day with 15.9 fantasy points. He caught only 5 balls, but he did have 10 targets. The Colts offense looked better with Matt Ryan under center over Sam Ehlinger. Other guys in this system had a good fantasy week, and now we can be a little bit more comfortable about that moving forward. Back to early season form for Christian Kirk, who just had 2 very solid fantasy weeks in a row now. Breakout day for Kadarius Toney in Kansas City, 19 fantasy points. They had some guys banged up, but he capitalized on his opportunities. Some life for Julio Jones now that he's healthy. 2 touchdowns across his last 3 games. He can be that 3rd option in the offense. Not a good fantasy week, but it was a good sign that Treylon Burks had 6 targets in his first game coming off the IR. It was a down week for the Chargers outside of DeAndre Carter, who I forgot to put his last name. Darrell Henderson led the Rams in total touches, but it's very murky and nobody should be trusted. 27 touches is clutch for Josh Jacobs in Week 10. He had another great outing. 3rd game in a row with 23 plus fantasy points. Tua has a great system around him, but he's been producing very well. The Minnesota trade was great for TJ Hockenson. He is the number 2 target right now on that offense. Juwan Johnson reminds me of 2020 Robert Tonyan with the touchdowns. Not sure what's going on with Wan'Dale Robinson. Big rushing day for Najee Harris. Bad fantasy week again. Ken Walker can catch footballs.